On this edition of Independent Sources, the emerging Asian Bloc. Even after a record turnout for Asian voters, the community complains they are still not actively courted.
Ethnic media underwater. Superstorm Sandy leaves some ethnic media outlets on the verge of permanent closure.
And male survivors dealing with the delicate issue of sexual abuse of men.
Welcome to Independent Sources. I'm Abby Ashola.
And I'm Gary Pierre-Pierre. Ethnic and immigrant voters made their voices heard loud and clear during this past election season. Hispanic voters came out in droves for President Obama, while more black voters came out to support the president than in the previous elections.
The most startling figure to many observers was the number of Asian voters who came out in support of the Democrats and more so the president. The community has long been seen as one that would follow the money and support a more conservative fiscal policy.
However, nearly 70% of Asians voted Democratic. Even with that, there are some in the community who say that the Asian vote is still not being actively courted. I spoke with Stella Chen of the Chinese paper Singtao Daily and Christina Pastor of the online Filipino publication Feline Magazine about the emerging Asian Bloc. Christina, I guess one of the biggest surprises of these elections was that the number of Asian Americans who voted for Obama, it was estimated about 80% or so. Was that a surprise to you?
It was not really a surprise considering that in 2008, there was about 60% of Asian Americans who turned out for President Obama, which is quite high at the time. And this year, I think the number is 72 to 73%. Okay. So it got bigger, true, only because the Democratic Party, I think, appears to be more welcoming, more friendly to immigrant communities, including the Filipino-American community.
Stella, about yourself, is that a surprise? And also, why was it so much larger this time? Why was the turnout larger than in 2008?
Well, I actually feel very surprised. Well, I remember while I was covering the general election that day, people literally lined up at 5 o'clock in order to cast their vote. And, well, according to the statistics that we have hands, like actually a lot of Chinese Americans and Asian Americans, they registered Democratic voters. So if they really turns out, like, come out to vote, the vote is going to be President Obama. And we're very happy of that. And I do feel that this year we have so many Chinese Americans and Asian Americans candidates to come out to run for office. And I do think that that motivates Asian voters to come out to vote as well. And then they feel that they are really a part of the democratic process.
What else that appealed to them, that the Democrats appealed to them on? Because I guess stereotype is that the Asians would always vote Republican because they're conservative, they follow the money, if you will. So what happened to that notion?
Well, I do think that that's the first generations, because according to many of my second generation friends, they are registered Democrats. They do feel that we have the need to get the comprehensive immigration reform get passed. And also the DREAM Act. The DREAM Act is coming out in the New York State Assembly, so that's why they want to register as Democrats and make it to pass through.
So Christina, what's this Asian voter, if you will? Can you describe it? Who are they?
The Asian voter is generational and faith-based in a sense. So while in my community, the Filipino-American community, we are traditionally Democrat in our orientation, but there is a segment of the community that is very conservative. These are the Filipino-Americans who are slightly older, 50 and above. They are probably anti-abortion, anti-gay marriage. They probably would be in favor of the death penalty. So this is a segment that may not be that big, but are natural allies of the Republicans. But for some reason, the Republicans did not court them assiduously. Why
was this segment that would be allied to the Republican Party ignored?
They were ignored. They were probably, the Republicans probably are not very good at grassroots organizing. So they did not reach out to the immigrant
But hold
communities
on.
as
I
actively.
mean, we remember that was their forte in 2004. Karl Rove, George Bush were lauded for their street-level operation, how they get out the vote
I don't
program
know.
they had.
We didn't see that. We didn't see that in this election, right? There was not even the GOP leaders that I spoke to, Filipino leaders that I spoke to, said that they were not as active, and they were looking for that
And it's
outreach.
not just in New York. I mean,
It's not in New York. The person I spoke to is based in the Virginia area, which is a swing state, I think. So they were it was a critical area to be in, but they did not get that feeling that the party was reaching out to them.
And there's a feeling among Asian community leaders and political leaders that they were not really well courted, even by the Democrats, that they de facto turned to the Democratic Party. Is that so? And what should the Democrat do to keep that that support?
Well, I do think that they have to reach out to immigrant communities and do more like grassroots activities. And I do feel that like the Democratic Party, they're starting to endorse some of the Asian American candidates, which will like feel like let the immigration community feel that they are inclusive in the political party process. And I think that's
Well, in Flushing, as Stella mentioned, you had a whole area to galvanize voters, but in other parts in a Filipino community, what do they need to do?
What do they need to do?
Both parties, for that matter.
Both parties? I think the Democrats are doing a better job of reaching out to them and telling their stories. I think also that the Democrats are talking to them about issues that they care about, like immigration, jobs, foreclosure. It's a sad story to talk about, but they are sort of listening. So they didn't see much of that from the GOP side. That's the sense I'm getting.
In 2008, there was a lot of talk about whether or not the Asian community would vote for a black man. They did, and this time again, they did even more so. Is this all talk about the Asians not voting for a black person now a dead issue?
I think so. I think in the beginning, it's not just the Asian community that was kind of reticent to vote for a black person. It was all of us, okay, even the white American. But President Obama was, I think, it was a matter of trust. It's a trust issue. He was able to project himself over the last 4 years as somebody who is probably trying his best to make government work, but he was being met with roadblocks in Congress. So the Asian American community, I think, was able to see that. They could see that he was doing his best. And maybe giving him another 4 years, he might be able to accomplish more. Okay. But race has, in this case, in this race is no longer an issue, I think.
Well, I think apart from building up an Asian power, we have to build up minority powers. And we have to see that like President Obama is going to have, he's not a one-term president because we are constantly putting minority candidates into the office so that we have built up a majority power.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Stella Chen, Christina Pastor, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Still to come on Independent Sources, ethnic media outlets battered by Superstorm Sandy.
Before that, Marlene Peralta has some other news.
Thanks, Gary. Here's a look at some headlines from the ethnic and community media. Voices of New York reports that 3 local immigrant politicians made a big splash during last week's elections, becoming the first from their various communities to achieve certain political milestones. Grace Meng became the first Asian American from New York to represent Queens in Congress. Ron Kim became the first Korean American to be elected in New York State, and Mark Jonai of the Bronx became the first Albanian American elected to New York State Assembly. El Diario La Prensa dedicated 2 pages to the Brooklyn District Attorney's investigation of a Sunset Park bakery that not only sold bread, but fake IDs of all kinds. The paper notes that it had exposed Las Conchitas Bakery's illicit business as the community's well-known little secret in August. The article detailed the counterfeiters' techniques, including requiring clients to reveal the identity of the person referring them. Jose Mateo Castro, 56, and Leonel Escamillo, 43, were arrested as a result of the Brooklyn DA's operation. The men allegedly sold counterfeit Social Security cards, citizenship certificates, and even official Mexican IDs. Carib News reports on the growing dispute between 13 Caribbean countries and the United States over hefty subsidies the U.S. is proposing for rum imports from the region. Barbados' ambassador in Washington, John Beale, has described the U.S. Special Trade Representative's response to the island's concerns as feeble and condescending. The islands, including St. Lucia and Antigua, contend that sugar-based liquor has been a mainstay of their economies for a long time, and any subsidies against them could further compromise their already weakened economies. And finally, one of the city's few African-American female firefighters is encouraging other women into the field. Tracy Lewis has been a member of the FDNY for 12 years and says that she still enjoys the thrill. She says her childhood fascination with trucks led her to become an EMS worker. She initially considered becoming a police officer, but changed her mind because of budget cuts to the department. That from the Amsterdam News. Those were just a few stories from the ethnic and community media. Back to Gary and Abby in the studio.
Thanks, Marlene. Superstorm Sandy cut a swath through the tri-state area that will not soon be forgotten. Storm damages in New York City alone have been estimated to be at least $30 billion.
We've heard about the damage done to the Daily News and 1010 Winds. While those are important, we have not heard much about some of the ethnic and community media affected by the storm.
Several ethnic media outlets have been extremely hard hit, losing years of archives and even their headquarters to floodwater and wrathful winds. Tonight, we'll hear from the owner of the popular Spanish station HITN about the damage left in the wake of the storm.
Then I'll speak with Michelle Ray of the New York Press Association about what's being done to assist these organizations.
My name is Jose Luis Rodriguez. I'm the founder and CEO of HITN, which stands for Hispanic Information and Telecommunications Network. We are the first and only public television network for the Latino community in the United States. Where we are right now standing, the water came, because the way we constructed it somehow came up from the bottom and cracked the floors. If you look at the whole studio, is cracked and destroyed. We have to rebuild all this. I mean, it goes all the way to the other end. We thought we had protected ourselves with the bags, but since the water came from directions that we really didn't anticipate, it filled up a number of equipment that we have here stored, props, even papers. Our engineers are telling me that we have between $3.5 and $4 million worth of damage here. But it's not only the damage, it's that our ability to produce for the next maybe 4 to 5 months is going to be impaired. We might have lost our history because all the files that dealing with HITN, we have them down here. Really, I still even haven't paid attention to that, okay? Because that's for me personally, that could be my really the biggest damage that we suffer, because you know it's been 30 years to build this, and there is a history here.
Michelle, who are some of the ethnic media affected by Hurricane Sandy?
I think all of the ethnic media in Manhattan that I know of were affected by Hurricane Sandy, because the majority of them are located either in Lower Manhattan or in Brooklyn and Queens. And so I don't think that there was an ethnic newspaper that wasn't impacted somehow.
So how serious is it?
It's really serious. I mean, it's serious on a lot of levels. To begin with, these are all owner-operated businesses, so they're small businesses that operate on a shoestring under normal circumstances. But the week of the hurricane, they all called in whatever staff they have before the hurricane ever started to try to beat the hurricane and meet their deadline before they lost power. but we had newspapers throughout Lower Manhattan, Nassau, especially the Rockaways. Two of the newspapers that we have in the Rockaways were completely wiped out. Papers in Lower Manhattan were completely flooded. In fact, some of them spent some time at CUNY. The Daily News was flooded, and 30 people from the Daily News staff moved into the offices of the Jewish Week, which is in Times Square. We have two papers still working out of the Queens Chronicle, which is in Rego Park. Competitors working out of competitors' offices, which is really remarkable. Yes.
Wow. So what is the New York Press Association doing to assist these newspapers and media outlets?
We're essentially coordinating things and helping them to find new hardware, old software, to recover data from their hard drives, to get them back up to speed, whatever it takes. Essentially, we're interviewing the papers one-on-one to find out what they need and then trying to fill the needs. Today, CUNY was good enough to donate some used computers, so we had staff pick up computers this morning, drive them to Rego Park, where people from the Rockaways were coming in to get them. The Wave today, which is located in the Rockaways, is being cleaned out as we speak by people who have today off because it's Veterans Day. People are down there actually shoveling sand out of the office. They had 8 feet of water there. And unfortunately, they sandbagged before, and the sandbagging was almost worse for them because when the water came in, it brought the sand in. So in addition to dealing with water issues, they're also dealing with beach sand.
What do you think some of the long-term effects will be?
I think the long-term effects are mostly going to have to do with the businesses that formerly were their advertisers. When are those advertisers going to come back? When are those businesses going to reopen? How much money are they going to spend or be able to spend to tell people that they are open again? I think this is a particularly bad circumstance in terms of timing. The newspaper industry relies on November and December to be their year for advertising revenue. And losing all those businesses, it's unlikely they'll come back during the holiday season. Losing those businesses during the holiday season and for an even longer period of time could be financially just awful for these papers.
Do you think some of these papers will ever come back?
I hope they will. The New York Press Association's mission is to make these papers sustainable, so we're going to hold their hands and try to help them through this, whether it's with personnel resources or financial resources or whatever, but they've been struggling with a soft economy for several years now, so I think that the prognosis is tough.
So what has the damage been to some of these papers and their archives? How significant has that been?
That's been super significant. One of the things we're working with right now is finding data retrieval firms from across the country that can help them get they've lost their archives, they've lost their client lists, they've lost anything that you can imagine that they were storing digitally, they've lost, or else they have it on a hard drive that in many cases is older than it should be. So trying to find companies that can affordably retrieve this data for them is essential. Their photo archives, their client archives, past copies of their newspapers, all that stuff is on their hard drives, and we have to find a way to get it off of there. But the quotes that they've been getting from companies to do this kind of data retrieval is unaffordable for them. So that's why the Press Association is looking for help for them.
Is there anything people in the communities that these papers serve, is there anything that they can do to help these papers?
I think from the newspaper standpoint, the best thing that people in the community can do is to continue to patronize the businesses in their communities. Don't forget how much the local restaurant, the local store, the local drugstore, the local gas station, how much business they lost from not having any power, not having any traffic. Don't forget how that put them behind the 8 ball. And to get the newspapers back up, we need to get the advertisers back up. So we need people to support their communities from both sides.
Thank you so much for being on the show, Michelle.
Thank you for having me. Take good care.
You too. When we come back, the delicate issue of men dealing with sexual abuse.
How you doing? My name's Steve. My family's lived in this neighborhood for years. Recently, things got so tight, we had to go to our local food bank for help. I lost a lot of sleep worrying about what the neighbors might think. That is until I saw them there, too. How'd I do, Steve?
A little stiff. You could have done a little better.
What? Come on. You know, I have an Academy Award.
Yeah, but not for playing me.
Play a role in ending hunger. Visit feedingamerica.org/hunger and find your local food bank.
Finally from us tonight, sexual abuse in men has been described as a silent epidemic. Research indicates that 1 in 6 men are abused before the age of 16, but very few talk about it.
Dr. Howard Fradkin, the author of the new book, Joining Forces, has been working with a number of these men, encouraging them to speak up about the issue and move toward healing.
I sat down with Dr. Fradkin and Christopher Anderson of the group Male Survivors. We spoke about how they hope to get more men and the people in their lives to step forward and deal with the issue. Welcome, gentlemen. Dr. Fradkin, I'll start with you. What inspired you to write this book on male survivors of sexual abuse?
Well, I've worked with over 1,000 male survivors, and what I'm always struck by is how much struggle men have to feel any kind of hope for their recovery. And I really wanted to write a book that would help them know that it's possible to survive, it's possible to heal, and it's really even possible to thrive.
And what is a male survivor and a silence breaker? What does that mean?
Well, male survivor is any man who's been sexually victimized. It may be somebody who was victimized as a boy or as a man. They could be victimized by a man or a female. They could be victimized by anybody in their life who has power over them and who betrays their trust. The silence breakers in the book are a group of men, including Christopher here, who's willing to tell the story of their abuse and moreover tell the story of how they've healed and recovered. And that's a strong part of what I like to think about the book being, having its power to be able to help men feel that there really is hope for them.
Okay. And Christopher, you're executive director of Male Survivors, organization founded by Dr. Fradkin. Mm-hmm. Describe your work with male survivors.
Well, the biggest part of the work that I do right now is to help spread the word about Male Survivor, tell people about our website and the resources that we have available. Usually what I like to tell people, the quick answer is, what is Male Survivor? Male Survivor is all about providing hope, healing, and support to male survivors of sexual abuse and our partners in healing. So I've actually been doing presentations at a number of professional conferences, speaking as a survivor myself, but also in this role now as a peer advocate, trying to share with people the information that we've developed over the course of the past 10, 15 years of how to really be able to best help male survivors of sexual abuse move forward with their lives, how to be able to reconnect with other people, rebuild those bridges of trust that were shattered by the abuse.
Okay, and your story is included in Dr. Fradkin's book. Describe what your healing process was like.
Well, for me, as with many other male survivors, I had lived for most of my adult life carrying the story inside. It was not something that I wanted to talk about very often, and it was not even something that I even really dealt with in therapy, even though I'd been in and out of therapy quite often throughout my life. I had minimized the abuse in my own background because it was something that happened for me, as far as I can recall, one time. But within the context of so many other things that had happened throughout my childhood, a very dysfunctional home environment, a lot of challenges growing up, I never really thought the sexual abuse was that big a deal. And it really wasn't until I was, my first marriage fell apart, and I was struggling with suicidal tendencies again at the age of 30, that I finally started reaching out and looking for information and support surrounding the sexual abuse itself, because I had learned belatedly that that event actually had a much, much greater impact on my life than I had ever believed.
Wow. And your book, Joining Forces, is written in different steps that men are supposed to take in order to heal. Can you describe some of those steps?
Sure. The earlier steps of recovery include just being able to feel safe enough inside your body, because what you're dealing with is really traumatic and really tough. So I want men to learn just simple things like how to breathe. and that's a difficult thing to do, because really we don't know how to do that so well.
Wow.
And then I help people figure out how to figure out who's the safest people in their lives to talk to. I talk about how to tell your story, and then I talk about some very specific skills that men can learn. One of them that I like to call the learning to be disloyal to dysfunction and loyal to functionality, which is all about learning how to be healthier in your life. What we learn growing up when you're abused is that you're supposed to be loyal to your perpetrator and loyal to all the things that perpetrators teach you, like you don't deserve to be protected, and it's your fault if you got abused, and it's a shameful, terrible thing. And so what I want survivors to learn is that it's possible for them to release themselves from that shame, to reclaim their life, to reclaim the ability to trust people again, to set healthy boundaries for themselves, and then they can function much more effectively.
One of the steps that jumped out at me was dare to dream you can connect with the boy inside of you. What does that mean, and why is that important?
It's really important because for men who've been abused as boys, what happens is that boy kind of gets shut down inside. And all those secrets, all that terrible, awful things that were done to him, he keeps inside. And the idea of connecting with your boy is about the ability to be able to find that boy and give him a voice so he can speak his truth. And then you can connect with that playful, spontaneous energy that many survivors are really pretty serious. And it's so helpful when you can connect again, because then you can play and play in a healthy way, because a lot of survivors know how to play in unhealthy ways. They're addicted to all sorts of things, which is how they play. That's not the healthiest way to be able to be true to yourself and have a healthy life.
Yeah. And Christopher, you're writing a presentation called 10 Things Every Partner of a Male Survivor of Sexual Abuse Needs to Know.
Correct.
What are some of those things?
Well, a lot of the things that we are trying to talk about are understanding that because our trust was shattered most often by the experience of abuse itself, it impacts our ability to be able to form healthy relationships with other people in our lives moving forward, most especially our closest partners, our spouses, intimate partners, girlfriends, boyfriends, what have you. And it's really important to be able to speak to those people as well and bring to our partners the kind of support and information that they need to heal as well. You know, we at Male Survivor, we've actually started through our Weekends of Recovery program. We now actually offer weekends for couples to start helping couples start to rebuild some of their relationships. One of the things that my wife shared with me when we actually went to a weekend together, she said something that really kind of opened my mind to this idea. She said that the man who abused me actually also wound up harming her because of the ways in which it's impacted my ability to be able to trust. And that's had a profound impact on our relationship. So what I want to do with this talk in particular for partners is to begin to give them some information that will help them understand the survivor in their lives a little bit better, and hopefully be able to start helping couples build some of those bridges that the abuse itself might have taken apart.
And Dr. Fratkin, you know, there's been lots of news about sexual abuse in sports and in religious institutions. What can parents take away from that news to ensure that their children don't get victimized?
Well, I think it's really important for parents to remember that boys get abused too. And that unfortunately is a misconception that parents have that only girls get abused. And so first of all, it's really important for them to know I have to protect my boy children and my girl children. I think it's really important that parents learn to teach their children that anytime to teach their child that they can talk to them, that their child can come to them anytime they're having a problem, anytime they might feel uncomfortable with the way somebody's touching them, that the child knows I can tell you, you're going to believe me, you're going to help me, you're going to support me, you're not going to punish me, because a lot of times perpetrators will teach their victim that if you say anything, you're going to be in trouble, or I'm going to hurt your parents, and they really need to know that they can always come to their parents for help. Because a lot of times kids feel so ashamed and so dirty and believe what their perpetrator told them that they won't come to their parents or they won't go to somebody in authority. So it's important for parents to teach their kids they have a right to do that. It's important for parents to pay more attention because in my experience, any victim screams for help some way or another, and we have to pay attention to how they're screaming, that they really are saying there's something wrong.
Dr. Fratkin and Christopher Anderson, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having us.
Dr. Fratkin will be conducting the 13th Male Survivor Conference at John Jay College from November 15th to the 18th.
That's our show for this week. Thanks for staying tuned.
Till next time, be independent-minded.